So, greetings, everyone. I'm Elmore Alexander. I'm a principal consultant with Optimal Campus, and I'm the host for today's meeting. We like this Let's Talk format. We felt like we've really gotten some good interaction going with that, and that's our goal today. Basically, we want to do two things today. We're going to sort of split the conversation up into two halves. One, sort of what have we learned from the fall? And second, what scares us when we look out for the spring? And we were originally going to have three participants on the panel with us today. Unfortunately, Karim Ismaili, the provost at Bridgewater State University, sent me a email in the middle of the night. He's got a dog of many, many years who had been suffering this spring, and they finally hit the point this evening that they realized that they had to euthanize the dog today. And so his loss and our loss as well on that. And certainly our thoughts go out to him in that. But we are joined today by two administrators from different perspectives to talk to us. First is Amy Zeng, who is the Dean of the Sawyer School of Business at Suffolk University. Previously, Amy was at the University of Hartford and Worcester Polytech, and Dean and Associate Dean perspective. So welcome, Amy. And Patricia Clay is the CIO at Hudson County Community College. Previously, she was at DeSales University in information systems perspective. So those are our two panelists to get things started today. And we're going to be relatively brief in terms of getting things started and then move on to see what questions you have. So use the chat function. Reach out, say you have a question, have a comment to make. Michael and Nuno and Tom are tracking those, and we'll bring you into the conversation so that we can talk. So that first question then, and I posed this a couple of weeks ago to Amy and to Tricia, is, what were the two things that surprised you this fall about the reopening? Tricia, since Amy was hopping in here late, I'm going to come to you first and give her a little bit longer to catch her breath. So what surprised you this fall?
Well, what surprised me actually is how well things went compared to what I was afraid of. We had some supply chain issues, so some of our classes coming into basically a high flex model, we had to let faculty hanging, and we were training, kind of putting the wheels on the car as we were driving. But everyone's really been quite resilient. That as far as we have about 15% of our classes on ground, so it's a lower percentage than maybe some others. But the screening process, temperature taking, mask wearing, all of that has really gone very well. And like I said, everybody's been very resilient and understanding, which has made a much better experience.
What was surprise number two?
Surprise number two was that I happened to be in New Jersey. And the governor had a very kind of strict lockdown. And then we came to the beginning of August, and all of a sudden it was like, well, as long as you guys wear masks and socially distanced, have at it, do whatever you want. So we thought we were dealing with very strict regulations. And then we were able to do more things. I happen to oversee open computer labs, and we didn't think we were going to be able to open those, and we were able to open those, which is great for our students. But there was a lot of scrambling at the last minute on
Interesting.
How are we going to clean? How are we going to do PPE?
Let me probe a little bit on that, because I was this morning looking at the national numbers, and New Jersey is at the top of the list right now on new cases. So, and if you look at the R factor, New Jersey is an outlier high on the R factor right now. Are you expecting a clamping down maybe in the next few weeks?
I'll be honest with you. It seems like from the political perspective, it's unlikely that we'll see a lot of clamping down unless the R rate gets completely out of control. But that said, we have been having robust conversations on campus about what happens if I'm incorrect about that.
Yeah.
We get forced to go remote. We're not terribly concerned about that because we were really prepared. We've been prepared to go remote. Honestly, opening up more has turned out to be more of a challenge because, you need to maintain the distance. So things happen like, oh, well, we have the open labs open. We have 3 open labs. Can we just increase the labs? Could we maybe open regular academic labs to open use tomorrow? And it's like, well, sort of. Well, we can, but we have to, set up the cleaning and the PPE.
Interesting. Okay. Well, thank you. Amy, let me pivot to you. What surprised you? You had the interesting experience of starting in a new job in the middle of COVID. What surprised you this fall about the opening at Suffolk?
Thank you. First of all, hi, everyone. Nice to see you, and especially nice to see you, Elmore, Nuno, and Michael. I know it's been a while since we met in person. Thanks for having me. And Elmore, you're absolutely right. I started my current job 3 months ago in the middle of the pandemic. So the experience has been interesting. That actually can be a surprise. But I want to talk about 2 other surprises. The first one is very similar to what Tricia has mentioned. The projection, enrollment projection, turned out to be much better than the university projected. Of course, they did the projection before I joined. So after I joined the university, I was told that they thought they would look at 20% down because Suffolk University, as you may know, is located in Boston and has 20 to 25% international students. So they were quite conservative in spring when they tried to project the enrollment for the coming school year. But as it turned out, the current total enrollment is only 6% down. Because we have seen increase in enrollment in law school, which is great. And at the business school, where I'm leading now, we have seen an increase in part-time and online students. So that increase offsets the loss we've seen from international side. We did lose more students at the undergraduate level than we did for the graduate level. Basically, the graduate enrollment is about the same as before. Last year, they had a golden year, so it's a bad benchmark to compare. But our current total graduate enrollment is better than 2 years ago, 10% better.
Wow.
And undergraduate level, the business school has seen maybe roughly 10 to 12% down.
Okay.
So, for the whole university, only 6% down from last year's data. Okay. So I think overall the projection, enrollment projection, as for private university, right, which is very heavily dependent on enrollment, I think this is very great news.
Okay. What was surprise number 2?
Yeah, happy surprise. Second one, although I started at the end of July, I participated in a lot of discussions and meetings for preparing the coming fall. And a lot of policies were developed, very strict protocols were also developed. So I have to say, as the semester continued, or started and continued, well, for example, one example to show you, Suffolk University is very urban setting. So it has only tall buildings and really no traditional campus. So they developed very strict policy for elevators. But as it turned out, there's nobody actually using the elevator because the campus is just very, very quiet and sparse. And because most students, even though we offer 4 modalities, including high flex, there are face-to-face classes on campus. the whole campus is just very quiet. And like today, I'm in my office. I'm all by myself in the dean's suite, and I haven't seen any student yet. So I guess it's both positive and negative in the way that, while positive, right, we have very nice testing policy, testing facility available, very convenient for everyone to test. Like for someone that comes to campus regularly, we need to be tested at least once a week. So very strict. If you don't do that, you will be restricted. You can't go to any building. So very strict. On the other hand, I guess there's a fine line between strict control and fairly loose control. And as it turned out now, not many people are on campus, and the elevator is very empty. So
that's interesting. I know when I was talking to Karim Ismaili, who couldn't be with us here today, he told me that one of his two things was going to be you can manage from a distance. And I couldn't believe this, but he has been to campus only once since the lockdown last March, and is provost of a campus of well over 10,000 students. So it is quite amazing what can be done from a distance. Let me open things up. Are there other people who would like to make comments? What has surprised you in what has happened this fall? Any volunteers out there?
I don't see anything in chat just yet, but
we need to unmute everybody.
I don't think so. If anyone wants to be unmuted, they can raise their hand or mention it in chat.
Well, let me probe a little bit with Tricia and Amy. Then I was on a Zoom this morning with Switzerland, actually also on one with Germany. And Switzerland had the real huge impact yesterday of being shut down in the middle of the day, at least in the canton where the university that I'm involved with is, and went from having high flex to totally online at the snap of a finger. Now, I know Tricia said, the political environment, she doesn't expect that. I think we have a little less volatile political environment, maybe in Massachusetts in that regard. Amy, would a political decision to shut down have much impact, do you think, on Suffolk at this point?
Yeah, we are in the downtown Boston, right? So Boston, I think, became a red zone a couple of weeks ago. And so the university keeps very close eye on the Boston's policy, or the mayor's policy. And I think the whole campus has been very cautious about reopening and also bringing people. So it's a dilemma sometimes, and the president really wants to see more people and more vibrant and active campus. On the other hand, they also need to be very cautious about people's health and safety. But overall, I feel there's the fine line may be there, but we don't know where it is yet. But definitely, I think Boston, the city's order and mayor's decisions will have huge impact on the university's decision.
And of course, the city schools pivoted this week to fully online. Tricia?
Yeah, I was going to say it's very interesting to me that Amy says that her president is interested in seeing things be more vibrant, because I've heard the same thing from our president. Sadly, he contracted COVID himself, and he's isolating at home. And I think that was instructive of, he's not well, sadly, we all hope and, pray for his speedy recovery. I'm sure he'll be fine, but he's continued to conduct meetings and have town halls and do everything. So I think, like Elmore was explaining, that we all can do a lot more remotely than we expected to. I've been to campus 3 times, and mostly that was to show off in my phony virtual background here is one of our video immersive classrooms. So I've gone to participate in in a remote meeting from our immersive spaces to show off the space, because I think the best way to show, hey, you can use this room effectively to teach is to show it rather than for me to talk about it.
Let me, since nothing has popped up from the audience right now. Oh, I do have, yes, please. I can't see a name. I saw a hand raised.
This is Steve McDevitt. I'm the
CIO. Steve,
Steve,
okay.
How are you?
Very good. Good to see you.
Just a sort of we're at St. Anselm College in Manchester. We're the opposite of the urban setting. We're 45%, we're 90% of our students are on campus, living on campus. We're 50% of our classes are on ground. About 35% of them are in a hybrid, sort of a split A-B side, and then the remaining are online. The thing that surprised me most was how well our students have actually followed a set of protocols that they sort of signed up for. The campus is no visitors to campus, so the campus is not really locked down, but if you're not a student here, faculty or staff, you're not allowed on campus. Students can leave. Nursing students who have clinicals go, education students who have their student teaching assignments, they leave campus. Students who have internships can leave campus. There's no intervisitation between residence halls, which is driving everybody bananas. But the model that we created was sort of the family unit that you can hang with are the people that you share a bathroom with. And so we have seniors in townhouses, and there's 5 seniors per townhouse, and so there can be a family unit. And then within the other residence halls, that's the model that we've embraced. The biggest stress was the supply chain. The equipment for some of our hybrid classrooms literally showed up the day before classes start, and there was a crew here that included faculty who sort of jumped in, literally installing tracking cameras. Everything was prepared. It's just we were literally waiting for a shipment from Malaysia, I believe, and it showed up the day before.
Steve, can I question you about one thing there? Because one of the data points that I've heard recently is that nationally, very, very little of the college campus transmission has been faculty member to student, or staff members, or students to faculty members. There's been almost no transmission from an instructional perspective. That the transmission has been parties and gatherings and that kind of thing. What has been what's the incidence of COVID on your campus, and how is that tracked over the last 2 months?
So we had a testing protocol for the students returning to campus. Before they got here, when they got here, there was isolation for a few days to make sure all the testing was completed. We've been doing 700 to 800 tests per week. I'm the overlord of randomness, if that is such a title, to determine who gets tested. And it's not random. If people say it's random, it's really not random. Between athletes and what the NCAA and NE10 require, the fact that our nursing students are getting tested at their clinical situations, so we don't need to test them again. We've had 3 clusters. We've had 19 positive cases out of the 2,000 plus students since August 12th. And in every situation, it was freshmen doing things that they shouldn't have been doing, i.e. going to a party.
Yeah, that's impressive. That's really, really impressive in terms of what
we started. The other important factor, I think that was part of our success. We actually started 3 weeks early. We started, I think, the 12th of August, and our semester is done the 20th of November, which is the Friday before Thanksgiving. So when our students leave, finals are the week after Thanksgiving, but they're not returning until February.
Wow. Okay, that's interesting. Thank you very much. Any other comments with regard to surprises on your campuses? Okay, well, let me pivot then to the second question, and I'll come to you first here, Amy. What keeps you from sleeping at night thinking about the spring semester? What's the cloud on the horizon from the Suffolk University standpoint?
Yeah, I think the main concern really has to do with, well, because of the location, right? And also New England weather, I think the weather will complicate the decision whether to go online only or continue offering all the modalities we try to do. And Suffolk University is a very student-centered place. All the decisions are driven by students. So the reason we are offering many modalities this semester is to give students the maximum level of flexibility. So we've been discussing what to do in spring. We like to continue all the 4 modalities in spring, but my concern is, given the challenging weather in New England and also the statewide and also nationwide statistics, which don't really indicate any positive trend, right, or nice trend, there's a likelihood that we have to pivot very quickly if things get even worse, and we may have to move things to online very quickly.
What percentages of your classes right now are 100% online?
Yeah, that's a good question. I know the law school classes tend to be offered online, most of the classes. So the College of Arts and Sciences also offers a good number of classes face-to-face. For the business school, we have about 15% classes that have face-to-face component. And because the policy here, the university prefers to offer enough, at least 2 face-to-face classes to freshmen. And as you know, the first year classes are primarily Gen Ed, right? And which are offered by College of Arts and Sciences. So that college really is facing a lot more challenges, and they need to figure out what classes would be offered online or face-to-face. For business school, we have very small number of 100 level and freshman classes. So we have much bigger percentage of online courses than any other colleges on campus. But again, maybe in terms of converting to online, business school has the advantage that we can change very quickly, because most of the classes have been online or have some combination of online and on ground. So it will be quite easy for us to change. Okay. But that for the whole university, there could be a big challenge.
Yeah. Tricia, what about Hudson Community College? What's keeping you awake in anticipation of the spring?
Well, some things that keep me awake, sadly, would go away if we went fully remote, because one of the things I worry about is we're planning for more on-ground classes, but they'll be held in a high flex type of model. And what I worry about is faculty who aren't really prepared, who haven't gotten we're offering training at least once a week, but either that they haven't taken advantage of the technology training, or that they don't ask for the technology, and we're, January 20th, and it's like, oh, I need a camera, and I needed this and that and the other thing. Because as Steve was talking about, we've had supply chain issues ourselves. But as far as if we have to pivot, one of the biggest challenges that Hudson has faced is we have a very large ESL program. And in fact, what we call in ESL level 0 and 1. So these are students that are not necessarily literate in their first language, which it totally blows me away that how this works. So what we're trying to do is pivot to a high flex model for those students, because they have been taught strictly remotely to date since March. And it's, as you can imagine, very challenging for people that don't speak English fluently to join classes remotely, right? So, and that's been a big chunk of some of the enrollment decline that we've seen. Like Amy, the college was planning for up to a 25% enrollment drop, which we have not experienced, thankfully. And what we've noticed is we have quick term classes and online terms which start later and are shorter, like 7 or 8 weeks. And the enrollment in those sections is very, very good. So it seems like students are voting with their virtual feet and choosing quicker terms and online modalities for a lot of things like gen eds, like Amy was talking about. So yeah, those are the
There was a question from someone in the audience that I saw in chat just a moment ago.
From Rich.
Oh, from Rich. Rich, do you want to chime in?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I was curious if there have been any surprising observations just about online versus in-person classes in terms of participation, attendance, student performance, etc. I know that many of you have mentioned that your institutions already had online classes previously for higher education, but have there been anything new in the COVID era for those same classes?
Rich, where are you from?
I'm located in Boston. I work for Eduporium, which is an online or e-commerce startup.
Okay. Amy, you want to start with that? Any reactions?
I think students' behavior is kind of unpredictable, and when we always try to offer face-to-face and or high flex, they tend to choose to take classes from their dorms or from home, or they just they don't want to go to the on-site or face-to-face section. So a number of faculty members have seen empty classrooms. So the question is what to do, right? And would you continue teaching in the empty classroom, or we should change the modality for that class? This has been a pretty controversial issue, actually, at least at Suffolk University. So I think although we, from the supply side, we are able to do multiple modalities, on the demand side, it's difficult to predict what students want. And as I mentioned earlier, in wintertime in New England, students don't want to go to classes even during normal time. And now with pandemic and others, it's very hard to control students' behavior. And then so faculty are left with empty classrooms, and if they have the high flex option. So that's a dilemma we are running into, and there's no a good solution at this point. And you would say, why can't you just change the modality if students wants to be online, right? But then occasionally some students want to go to the classrooms to have that interaction. And it's a private university. As I mentioned, it's student-centered. So they like to follow students' behavior to determine what the modality would be most appropriate. But in terms of efficiency, it could be difficult.
Interesting. Tricia, what have you seen in that respect to the community college setting?
What we found is it varies greatly by the type of student. So like we have a culinary arts program, a very robust culinary arts program. And those students were extremely anxious to get back into the kitchen, as you would imagine, right? And they're doing a very successful high flex model. So the students are, I think it's about 50-50 on the classes. So half the time you're in the kitchen, the other half of the time you're at home observing. And then also nursing was another group that were very anxious to get back into the classrooms, and also clinical settings. The clinical settings were very challenging because in the beginning of the pandemic, our clinical sites did not want to have our students there because we were, in the middle of a hot spot Hudson is right on the Hudson River, so you can see Manhattan from our campus, and we're highly urban too, similar to Amy. So it's been variable depending on the type of student, and there are students who are afraid to come to campus. You know, they're very concerned with the infection rate. And we also have a lot of student parents whose kids are, I think, the best case scenario right in our area outside of private schools is a hybrid model. So we don't have our K through 12s back fully face-to-face. So as you can imagine, if I'm a single mom, it's very difficult, if not impossible, for me to come into campus. One thing I wanted to say that goes along with what Amy is saying, we have these immersive video classrooms that are new. We actually installed them we were in the process of installing them and got them installed during the pandemic. And we have one faculty member who is teaching HiFlex. And what she said to us is that, this is purely anecdotal, right? It's not research at all. But she said there are students of hers that follow her from campus to campus. So she teaches from our North Hudson campus and our Journal Square campus. And some students follow her, and some students are always remote, and some students always want to be in class. So I think to Amy's point, we're not a residential campus, but trying to follow what students want is very difficult because students aren't monolithic. They don't all want the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think, that's interesting, certainly. And there's opportunity for some interesting research. You would suspect that some of the low participating students are actually going to resonate with the at least a little bit of anonymity in the Zoom kind of environment, and may well increase their level of participation and increase their satisfaction to be in these modes. I wonder what we will end up doing as we reach a new normal in this respect. I suspect the new normal is going to be far more varied and heterogeneous than it has been in the past.
Elmore, I believe Milos has a comment to add.
Please join us. Milos?
Sure. Nice to see you, Tricia.
Good to see you.
We used to work 2 miles apart in Jersey City, and then I left in August. I'm at Grand Valley State University. It's a public university in West Michigan, about 24,000 students, multiple campuses, and everything that everyone has said is spot on. Some other things that I would like to add, and I was 15 probably plus minutes late to the call. HiFlex is not what was promised to be. Right, let's call it what it is. When we had that Inside Higher Ed article with 15 different modalities and 6 months ago, and everyone's like, oh, HiFlex, that's the one that makes the most sense. There are certain equity issues. We have students, even though a lot of students in our community are better off than some others, better off than some of the students I worked with in Jersey City up until August. They don't have network connectivity. They don't have devices. They may not have safe environments at home where they can actually turn the camera on based on what is happening behind them. Right? There's all these assumptions that we kind of forget. I remember reading an article, actually read an article this morning, or it was yesterday, about a 4th grader in New Mexico walking every day to sit outside his school so he can connect to Wi-Fi to do his homework. Mm-hmm. Right? This is United States 2020. Now imagine some other countries, some other parts of the world. So there's a lot of assumptions with that. Also, a lot of our faculty members their levels of comfort with technology vary. So they get stressed saying, I got to manage these 15 in class and these 20 remote and these 2 technology and this tool and this stuff. And then they just end up not using any of it. And they either switch completely online or they just go back to assigning PDFs, posting them inside an LMS, and then using that as an online modality. Another comment that I made earlier, there was one of the conversations we had this morning actually here. Our attendance is lower than expected. And a lot of that is Some of the policies and some of the things we're trying to be more understanding, and we proceeded forward. We have 45% of fully online courses, and we have another, 40 that are hybrid. So 10 to 12% are on campus. It depends on what they are. It's mostly labs and types that are, we can't as easily replicate online just yet. But that freedom and flexibility has caused a lot of students just to not show up, or they connect to Zoom who are muted and cameras off all day. Mm-hmm. And now there are tools that exist. They can impersonate you on Zoom calls, in case you didn't know. There are services now that you can use and pay. Some are for free, some you can pay. And they will log into your meetings as your name, the whole thing, and just have you there as one of the attendees with you being nowhere near that room, right? So talk about innovation being used for something that's not really intended to be used for. So I think there's a lot of lessons that we can learn from. I think one of the things that are really important is to standardize. We have way too many applications in higher ed, way too many applications. We give everybody this freedom. And at times we abuse this term of academic freedom and use it in so many different things. This is real and true. We did this here. These are just enterprise applications that I mapped out here. Major enterprise applications. It's 4 pages. But it's not even all of them. This is enterprise applications that are used across all campuses. Yeah. It's insanity. We have 3 separate telecom solutions. Why? We have multiple email and calendaring solutions. Why? We have multiple event management solutions. Why? Right? Because we could. And I think it's important to simplify. There's a lot of beauty in simplicity. And I think that's the greatest lesson that we've learned in the last 7-8 months.
And interesting. Milos, very, very interesting comments. Tricia, you?
I was going to say Milos because no one told them no, right?
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to say on the equity end, one of the things that Hudson did, as soon as early April, and I think we started right when we went remote, we purchased loaner equipment to loan to students. So we now have 1,000. So we have over 7,000 students enrolled in matriculated programs, and we bought 1,050 Chromebooks that we're loaning out to students. And one thing that was interesting to us was in the spring, we started this program in the spring in April. We had extended spring break, and I believe students came back for online only classes March 30th. So it was that same week we started loaning out Chromebooks to students. We actually have had a greater need for Chromebooks in the fall than we did in the spring, which was a little counterintuitive to us. But what we found is that students are more willing to travel to campus to get the loaner equipment. And so we've had more that we're loaning out. The next thing we're looking at is hotspots to have on hand. We haven't had a lot of students requesting internet connectivity, but we had one very illuminating conversation with a particular student, just an example. But she's like, oh yeah, I have internet, I have Wi-Fi. I'm at home here with my 4 siblings. We're all on Zoom meetings simultaneously, but sometimes I can't connect into WebEx for my classes. And I'm like, well, of course you can't, because 4 video streams simultaneously is not enough for the Wi-Fi that you have. Yeah. So they're not asking us to help them with connectivity because they have connectivity, but it's very poor, yeah. Right?
Yeah, and that's something, I know personally, my wife's a clinical psychologist and doing therapy online. One of the first things I did back in April was to increase the speed of my connection. And that's, the privilege that I have in that respect, but not available to others. Amy, a comment from you?
Yeah. Yes, we have similar computer loan program, and all of our dorms are fully occupied, and the university is also renting 3 hotels to accommodate students. So most of our students actually have very good internet access. But the problem we are running into is the camera policy. Actually, Milos mentioned that. We have heard from a good number of students that they don't want to turn on their video. So I was wondering what kind of camera policy you have on your campus. Faculty's perspective is a virtual classroom should be the same as a regular classroom. Students need to be professional, right? They need to turn on their video. They need to see who they are, whether they are here, really, the real people are here. And also they need to interact. They need to make sure the exam is taken by the right people. So for various reasons, faculty do believe every student should turn on their video. But student side, of course, has different voices. And I was wondering how your campus is handling that issue.
One thing I might interject, I wrote in a blog a few months ago that I thought one of the things campuses ought to do is to choose a common background and just load that into the system so that no one has the embarrassment of choosing a background or knows that, you know, the background is going to be covered up. No one seemed to bite on that idea, but any thoughts? Tricia, you look like you're ready to comment.
Yeah, I mean, that's somebody, Steve, who just said not all computers can support virtual backgrounds. That's part of the issue,
okay.
Right? I mean, I love that idea if we could be sure that all students would be able to support the virtual background. But there's a lot of reasons why people don't want to have their cameras on. So in our faculty, like Amy was describing, we have a very loud faction of faculty that want to require cameras to be on. And we have a technology committee of what's called our all college council. So we have participatory governance, shared governance model. And what I have said is, from a technical perspective, I would prefer they do not require cameras on for that reason. We have no way of, since we don't provide technology to all of our students, there's no way I can say for sure that a student at home is able to use their camera effectively and still participate. Our Center for Online Learning, they have come out with recommendations about how to, aside from what Milos brought up, that it might be somebody totally different who's just participating in the meeting, which is another issue. There are other ways that you can make sure that students are participating, using polls, raise hand features, asking people to comment in the chat, and that kind of thing.
Yeah, interesting. Any other, Steve McDevitt, I see you've, we're ready to hop back in here possibly. Tom, can you unmute Steve?
I was just going to say, I mean, New Hampshire is a dual consent state, as is Massachusetts. We worked on a policy with respect to audio and video that actually I think is posted on like the New Hampshire. It's funny, they plagiarized our policy with permission, but yeah, so it's kind of a sticky issue because there's no rules around video recording, but there certainly is rules around audio recording, and you can't force a student to opt in if you're recording the class. It's different if you're not recording it. So, but if you are, if the faculty member is recording it and they're expecting students to participate, then, I realize it's not on video, then we couldn't have a policy at the college that would require them to be on audio, and so by extension on video.
Interesting. Michael?
Alice has a point she'd like to make.
Thanks, Alice. Welcome.
Hi, everyone. Well, thank you so much for having me. And I think this has been a really productive conversation. It's very interesting, Milos, you're talking about the number of platforms that are within the institution. And, you know, one of the things that I'm also working with over 350 institutions, and I've overseen kind of COVID health response from about like 50 institutions. And we have seen kind of how COVID happened across many partners. And it was interesting to see how certain institutions kind of opted for homemade solutions, which had an impact on staff hours. A lot of staff hours kind of being put into. And one of the things that we're seeing now is kind of a difference between community colleges and kind of private liberal arts. We're seeing how community colleges that went digital actually have a higher out of classroom engagement than they had before. And that was something surprising to see, is that now kind of the community college student has access to engage with different resources on campus, which before they couldn't do because everything was in person. So that was something that was interesting to see quite a significant increase. And one of the things that we're seeing is how communication becomes more important in today's world, because we have kind of focused a lot on email communication, and it didn't improve during COVID environment. It's still the same in terms of it's not engaging for students. And we're seeing institutions focusing a lot on communication and how do we create that comprehensive communication strategy across the institution, because of it's really hard to engage the current digital student. We don't have those posters anymore. We can't kind of engage the student in a way that we've done it before. So these are some of the things that we're seeing. And I think when Milos touched upon, the 4 pages of booklet of platforms, we're seeing that it creates a lot of complexity for students. And complexity creates disengagement. So that's where, how can we simplify the experience so that we can have our students increase the chances of them engaging. So these are some of the things that we've seen.
Yep. I certainly think the issue of how do you find a way to do co-curricular activities is going to be a very interesting challenge in the future. And if we're going to recreate the flexibility as we struggle through these processes, we need to reach out in that respect. We're coming in on the end of time. Any final comments from the audience? I'll come back to our 2 panelists in just a moment for one last shot, but anything else from the audience?
Elmore, can you hear me?
Yes. James, please.
Oh, that was Nuno.
Oh, Nuno, I'm sorry.
Hey, everybody. I don't know if we have time, but just throwing out a couple of questions in case anyone has any thoughts. One would be, if you were going to recommend one thing in preparation for the spring, what would it be? What would you potentially do differently? And the other one is, I know there are a number of faculty members in the quote unquote room. I see Chris from Harvard. I know Michael, you're from the WPI, Bridgewater, and a number of other institutions, faculty members. You're getting thrown all sorts of technologies, right? As a faculty member, what would be your biggest recommendation to those that are implementing the technologies, me being one of them? I work with a lot of instructional designers and learning technologists, and it's a challenge, right? For all parties.
Chris,
what is your advice?
Chris, you look like you're ready to say something.
Yeah.
I'm not a typical faculty member because I work in learning technology, so I can't answer how battered faculty are feeling. I'm actually excited. But what I will say is, if we think strategically, it seems to me that we're going to be doing hybrid learning for a long time, barring some kind of a miracle. And understanding how to make hybrid learning work is something that we should be doing tactically. So we should be conducting research on which, in a hybrid learning situation, what are the characteristics of the students who prefer to be online, and what are the characteristics of the students who prefer to be face-to-face? That's low-hanging fruit. Harvard is developing a system called Helix that attempts to privilege online to students to the point that they're they're equivalent to face-to-face students, and it's easier to manage. Now, many campuses may be developing similar systems at different price points. Let's share what's going on with that and what works and what doesn't work. So I'm not suggesting that we don't focus on the tactical, because that's what this whole session has rightly been about. But where we can collect information or where we can share information that we know is going to help us strategically next academic year, I think it makes sense to do that.
Yeah. I certainly know from watching my son and daughter-in-law, who are both 30-something assistant professors at small liberal arts colleges, that they feel overwhelmed. Absolutely overwhelmed by the prospect of going from that intimate environment to exclusively teaching online and trying to maintain what that is like. We're here, I think, at the end of our time. Amy and Tricia, let me come back to you guys. Final comment. Amy, what's going to make the spring better?
I would encourage more sharing, as Chris just mentioned, sharing among faculty. Even though the business school overall is a pioneer on online teaching, faculty levels of skills and comfort levels really vary. So I've seen some of my faculty members that are very creative and very knowledgeable about new technologies, new devices. Then they have also incorporated them into their classes very effectively. And of course, we also have other faculty who are used to just very traditional teaching. So I think sharing among faculty more frequently is something I would like to do. Maybe even before the spring starts, I would like to maybe organize an information sharing session to ask a few great faculty to share their ideas, how they teach online and how they engage students. Excellent idea.
Tricia, last idea.
Yeah, I think what's really critical, speaking as more of a technology expert, is providing training, but not training like, here, watch this video and I told you how to push the buttons, but in a workshop environment where you bring faculty get together along the lines of what Amy is talking about, where we are helping them to, this is how you push this button, but then the faculty together can share ideas of, oh, I've used breakout rooms to do this. Oh, I've used polling to do that. You know, you can use whiteboarding functions for this and that. And I think making those opportunities accessible and frequent, because like you're explaining, Elmore, with your son and daughter-in-law, they're overwhelmed, right? And their schedules are booked chock full. So we can't just have, well, we had a workshop. We had a workshop and here you can go watch the video. And I think that's, you know, we've tried, I'm blessed to have a very large academic lab team where I have lab assistants that can be in our remote classes and our face-to-face classes. And that helps a lot because they develop a relationship with the faculty. And then the lab assistant is doing the technology part while the professor only has to worry about the pedagogy.
Yeah, good point. Nuno Kudo is the father of this meetup, and let me come to you, Nuno, for sending us away.
Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, great. I'm not sure if father of the meetup is true. This is a real collaboration among a number of people. But I think I just wanted to say thank you for everyone for joining. So again, my name is Nuno Kudo. I'm one of the co-organizers and founder of Optimal Campus Consulting. But in any case, we just want to be helpful. If you have a particular topic of interest that you'd like us to bring people together around, please just let Tom know. Send us an email here. If you want to be introduced to anyone else in the group, whether it's in this meeting or any of the approximately 500 or so other people in our group, just let us know. If you want to be a panelist and you have a particular passion around something, same thing. I know that Amy mentioned and Chris was mentioning, hey, let's collaborate, let's learn from each other. If you'd like us to bring faculty together from multiple schools to have a conversation, we can talk about possibly doing that as well. The next meetup we're having is on digital transformation for higher ed. And sometimes people think digital transformation is simply just, we're going to upgrade our system. But true digital transformation really has a lot more to it. So hope you can make it. And, again, just thank you for joining. Hopefully this was of help to everyone.
Amy, Tricia, thank you very much for your participation and helping to lead us in this conversation.
Thanks for
inviting me.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Trish.
Great to see you.
Have a great weekend, everyone. Be safe.